the invitation, and I thank all of you to be here and wait for this technical issues. So this is today's topic. I'm gonna talk about multi-area interchange scheduling under uncertainty. So before I go to my talk, I want to know who have power system background here. Okay, perfect. There are minorities, but I will try to make things slow at the beginning. So nowadays, the electric grid is very different from before because there are a lot of new technologies coming in. So in the United States, we are trying to make the grid smart. So we call it smart grid. By that, we mean we will have a lot of renewable energy like solar or wind. They will be in different forms, like the distributed one would be the rooftop at your homes, or there are large wind farms or solar farms to generate power. And also there will be a lot of deployment of battery storage. There can be electrical vehicles. They are treated as mobile storage, and also we can have battery factories that are built at large scales. Also, the consumers, they are not passive as before. By that we mean there are advanced metering technologies. There will be communication between operators and the consumers. So their demand, like home, let's say you will have such as smart appliances like air conditioner, dishwasher, etc. They will have communication capability so that the operator can control your device without your knowing. But as a consumer, you can set preferences for the operator to manage your load in that way. By that, the demand is no longer deterministic, but it can involve in flexibilities. So with this three progress, we can tell that the uncertainty is everywhere in the electric grid. It's not like before. The demand is fixed, and we only have conventional generators like fire, like a gas or oil. You can always generate whatever you want. They will always they will always follow your instructions. But for wind and solar, because of the output is random, so the generation is no longer deterministic or controllable nowadays. So there will be two sides uncertainty in the system. But the electric grid is always operated in a deterministic way because the demand is treated as deterministic. You will predict it in a very short time. Then you will dispatch generator to fulfill your demand. But now this assumption is no longer valid. So we need a new paradigm for the power system and market operation. So for that, I have built a stochastic paradigm for the operation. So most interrelated problems and decisions in the electric grid can be viewed as operation and decision making under uncertainty. So for optimization under uncertainty, there is a traditional approach called two-stage stochastic problem. By that I mean you have to make a decision now, considering the uncertainty in the future. Let's say you want to, it's the dynamic programming thing. This stochastic paradigm has to deal with two components. The first is you have to characterize your uncertainty in the future. So before this stochastic paradigm, people just make point prediction. What does that mean? It's, let's say you want to predict what's the load of your home. The point prediction will only give you a nominal value of your load for the next hour. but you will never know what happens in the next hour. So by uncertainty characterization, we are more interested in a distribution for your load in the next hour. So with that conditional distribution, we want to develop a problem-oriented solution by considering that distribution. So for this paradigm, as the first component, I've done two major works. One is probabilistic forecasting of the real-time locational marginal price. So locational marginal price is in a network at each node, the price will differ from each other. So that's called the LMP here. And also predict the network congestions. For electric grid, there will be transmission lines. They will have a thermal limits. You cannot transfer more power than the limit. And the second problem is what I'm working on right now is on the probabilistic modeling on the residential load, both as the household level, that's the entire home's energy consumption, or even at a finer resolution at appliances, such as your AC, your clothes washer, your pool pumps, etc. So for the second component, once we have this uncertainty characterization, we have to develop a solution with considering the uncertainty in the future. For that, the main problem I've considered is the inter-market coordination. So the first would be today's focus on the stochastic inter-regional interchange scheduling. And the second part is the multi-area economic dispatch with interface bits. So let's come to today's outline. I'll give a background on this problem and give the state-of-the-art techniques implemented in the US electric grid, and then come to the proposed technique for the stochastic scheduling. So here is a plot from RTE website. Does anybody know RTE here? Okay, perfect. So the RTE is the French transmission operator. So they basically monitor all the electricity flows, price, demand, and generation in France. And as you can see the map here, the white area is France. It has 6 neighbors. Across there would be UK, and across there would be Germany. I think you guys all know this map better than me. So you can tell, so here the blue arrow is indicating the imported energy from the neighbors of France. And the green one is the export from France to its neighbor. So I checked with RTE's website. It reports the maximum daily consumption of 2017 until today is over 94 gigawatt. And the maximum import is around 9 gigawatt. That is around like 10%. And the export is more than 17 gigawatt. That's like 18% of the maximum daily load. So by that I mean import and export are substantial fraction of the daily consumption. So that makes you have to be care about how much import and export you should schedule between your neighbors. So similar import or export, that's what we call interchange because it's not really across countries. Here we call it neighboring balancing authorities. You can think it as a country, but it's just consists of several states in the US. So there are a few majors. You can see this New York is over here, and it has 3 neighbors. One is in Canada, This one is New England on the northeast, and the PJM including Pennsylvania, and across that. So these are big transmission operator, or we call it regional transmission operator or independent system operator. So on the West Coast, things are more crazy. So there are smaller regions, they have neighbors with more complicated topologies. But so with that, we are not, so although all these regions are operated independently, but there are physical power flows from you and your neighbors. Because there will be cost reduction, market efficiency, and reliability improvement for this transfer. So they're similar to France. There are substantial amounts. There are over 16% demand in New England. That's the small area there. And the 30% on Long Island, that's a small part on New York, are satisfied by the imports by that much. So whether we can schedule this imports or exports sufficiently can really affect your cost and the efficiency of the market. So when we go down to the resource resolution, there is the new emerging technology called microgrids. Those are on very small scale. Let's say for a university, it can operate it on its own if it's disconnected for the big grid. So it has its own generation, has its own demand. They can satisfy their own demand by the local generation if they want. So for this small scale, the scheduling between each other is also important because there might be excesses generation. There is some peak load that cannot be satisfied by your own. So all of them comes to two big components. One is each region, they are operated independently. They have private information they do not want to share with your neighbors. But you still want to make coordination with your neighbors to make the overall system's efficiency. As I said, now with the renewables coming in, storage, and demands being responsive, there are significant uncertainty. We have to figure out a way to manage the uncertainty in the operation. So now let me tell you two techniques of state-of-the-art techniques in interregional trading in US. So let's start from simple examples. There are only two areas, so area 1 and 2. So there are timelines connected with each other. With each area, you have traditional generator, renewable generator, and load. So in US, the interregional or inter-area interchange has to be made by market participants. So market participants submit a request to buy energy or sell energy at specific locations. They are called proxy buses that are indicated by those blue boxes. So they can be an actual location in each system, or they can be virtual. So with that request, the system operators needs to independently clear this request by comparing your local generation cost and your neighbors. So the one key idea of this interchange quantity is it has to be scheduled ahead of a physical delivery. So in US, the interchange has to be determined 1 hour and to 60 minutes, to 90 minutes ahead of the physical delivery. So within this time gap, a lot of things can happen. That's where the uncertainty comes from. So when the physical power flows across the timelines, the price can be settled So they are settled at the real time, the locational marginal price after the delivery. So market participants, they are actually betting on the direction of the flow. If they are betting correctly, they will make money. If they're betting incorrectly, they will lose. So here is a small example. If someone X buys 100 megawatt from area 1 to area 2, and the bid is cleared by the system operator, and the interchange is set as 100 megawatt, they will dispatch their internal generation and compute real-time LMP. By that, I mean operator 1 needs to generate 100 megawatt more than its demand, because there will be the extra to transfer to area 2. And on the other hand, area 2 just need to generate 100 megawatt less than its demand. So if the price in area 1 is $40 per megawatt, and in area 2 is $50, then this market participant will make $1,000. But if the price is reversed, then it will lose. So anyone gets the idea on this? Cool. So let's see how good is this scheduling mechanism. So let's first define what is an efficient schedule. So let's say if there are two areas, the interchange is essentially driven by the price difference. It always makes sense for the flow to come from a low price region to a high price region, right? So if there is a price difference, you can always make the flow like bigger from the low price to the high price. So what would happen finally? So this price will increase and this price will decrease until they are equal. Then there is no more flow has to be moving. So that's we call the price convergence. If the price at two areas are the same, then they are making their system operating in the optimal condition. So for the particular scheduling technique I described, there are two inefficient phenomena. One is a counterintuitive flows. That is on the left-hand hand. So there is the delta pi is from the price difference of New England and New York. So on the left hand, each dot represents an hour with the flow from New England to New York. So with the price is positive, the delta pi is positive. Each point here represents an hour. The power is flow from a high price region to a low price region. So that doesn't make sense, right? Because if let's say you are making a commodity, the cost is 100 euro, you just sell it as 50. So what's the point, right? So on the left hand is all counterintuitive flows, but on the right hand side, so we can see the flow now is, the power is now flowing from the low price region to the high price region. The direction is economically correct, but the problem is for the point over there, if you move more power from the low price region to the high, the price difference would be smaller until the convergence. That's the point you do not need to move further flow. So here is a subtle inefficiency here. So you can make more, or you can reduce your cost by further increasing your flow from low price region to the high. Okay, so for an efficient market here, for this particular plot, there should be no red point at all. That means that all the flows are in economically correct direction. And also for the all blue points on this panel, they should all move along this line. So for that is if so the price is converged for the points on this line. So based on that observation, there is an improved mechanism called coordinated transaction scheduling. So as you can see for the previous mechanism, there is no coordination between your neighboring operator. So market participants send requests to both operators, and they just clear on their own, right? So for this new mechanism, there are a few improvements. One is there is a shorter latency. So as I described earlier, the interchange has to be scheduled ahead of time for the physical delivery. So for the previous mechanism, it's scheduled for 1.5 hours before the physical delivery. But for this one, it's reduced the latency into 1 hour. And there is a higher scheduling frequency that you can update your interchange for every 15 minutes. But before, they can only do it in every hour. Also, previously, the market participant need to send buy price to one operator, sell price to the other. But now they just need to have this price difference called delta pi, and also specify the quantity they want to send. And the clearing is done by both operators. They will pull all the requests together and then determine the schedule together. So let me illustrate it using this plot as well. So we are still looking at area 1 and 2. So Q here represents the interchange quantity, and we are just assuming the flow is from area 1 to area 2. For that, if we vary Q, vary the quantity, area 1 will be generate a supply curve. And similarly, area 2 would be a demand curve. But so if there's no market participants, then these two curves are just generated from the operator. But how can you incorporate market participants' bid? That is incorporated if you vary your Q. So by that I mean like you have a collection of bids, and then you sort them according to the delta pi's, from smaller to the biggest. Then you will convert all the collection of bits into a bid curve. Then to incorporate that, you subtract it from the demand curve. You get the intersection of these two. That would give you the interchange quantity. So this is the result on this new mechanism. Let's see how good it is. So here is it's between New York and PJM, and the estimated cost saving would be over $13.5 million. But when they run for a year, the only actual realized one is just $1.5 million. So you can see there is a large margin that is not realized. So the reason why it doesn't work well, first, there will be substantial transaction costs. That makes the market participants are not willingly to bid in this market because their gain may not may be offset by their transaction cost. And the second reason is their price forecast for that supply and demand curve can be very, very inaccurate. This is essentially caused by the uncertainty in each area. You will have a lot of renewables, you have your active consumers, so that if you just use a point prediction, how come it can be accurate? So that's the reason we want to incorporate uncertainty in the scheduling. So as I mentioned, here is the timeline of the CTS, interchange scheduling. So market participants need to submit bids 75 ahead. And then at this time, the operator needs to determine the interchange quantity. So between this 1 hour random events happens, your wind can just disappear. There is a cloud. There is a cloud coming up. A sun is blocked. You don't have solar generations. So a lot of randomness can happen. So how can we incorporate this? So, okay, here is just a little math. So for each area, the operator needs to find the optimal dispatch for its generation. Essentially, there are generation constraints, the power balance constraint. That means the total generation should equal to the total demand. And also there are some network constraints. So the price is determined by the dual variables of this optimization. So we convert it into an economic argument, then the price here. So by D1 bar and D2 bar, I mean the point of prediction of your demand. That's just the mean of the future demand. So by CTS, the way it incorporates uncertainty is simply use the mean. By that, the stochastic problem is reduced to a deterministic one because you just use the mean value of your load forecast to represent the future. So, but what's really going on if you view D1, so D1 and D2, they are actually random variables. It can take whatever realization in the physical delivery time. If we plot the price for each realization, we will have a bunch of supply curves and a bunch of demand curves. So you will no longer have intersections. How do you make your decision out of it? Will you first average the curve and then take an intersection? Or you get intersection of each curve and then get the mean of all the intersection points? So there are just these two ways of which one is correct. So to answer that, we propose this stochastic optimization. With the first stage, we want to minimize the expected cost with the presence of load uncertainty here. And the decision of the first stage is your interchange quantity. And the second stage is when the interchange is scheduled, you need to, each operator needs to dispatch its internal resources to satisfy this interchange and also the demand. So that's the second stage. So we can derive the expected price curve of the interchange from the first stage problem. Then we have proved that the solution for this two-stage stochastic optimization can be easily computed by just intersecting the expected price curve and the expected demand curve. So because we have considered the continuous distribution of D1 and D2, if you want to go through traditional approach to solve a two-stage stochastic optimization, the problem itself is intractable. So we converted in social welfare maximization on the right. And it makes the problem easily to solve. You just need to search the intersection of these two curves. So this is the two areas problem. What if you have multiple ones? So if you have multiple ones, your interchange is no longer a scalar, but instead it's a vector here. So you won't have a supply or demand curve anymore, but instead you will have a surface because your price over here depends not only on So let's say for area 1, it's not only on, it depends on both Q1 and Q2, these two interchange, because either of them change would affect your price. Similarly, if you intersect the two services, you will come a line. Any line on that would give you the same price on two areas. So how do you choose? You can intersect for each interface and then intersect the two lines for a point. So this would give you to do that, you have to solve a nonlinear, a set of nonlinear equations. So in general, it's not tractable as well. So still, we formulate this problem as a two-stage stochastic optimization again. Before we have two areas, now we can have multiple. And the vector, the price is no longer scalar, but it's a vector. So to figure out the optimal interchange vector, we apply a coordinated descent algorithm. So the idea is very easy. First, you fix, so you want to optimize one interchange one at a time by fixing the rest of them. Let's say you have a vector. You want to optimize the first element. You fix the rest of them, and then you fix the first one, optimize the second one, and iteratively optimize each element of this vector until convergence. So if the cost is strictly convex, then this algorithm will converge to the optimal solution to this stochastic optimization problem. So
once you try to optimize for the first variable in the vector of like whole set of vector, and you find the minimum point for the first variable, do you adjust it when you go to the other variables, or you fix it and move ahead for the next variable?
You will first, so once you optimize for the first, you fix it at what you have for the first one, and then you optimize the second one. Let's say you have a vector of 10 elements. So you do 10 iterations from the first to the 10th, right? You go back to the first again. So you just iteratively upgrade one element one at a time, and then iterate this process until nothing is changed. You get the idea?
Yeah.
Okay. So, let's come to the simulation result. So here is like a 3-area IEEE 118 bus system, and we have like 3 areas, 2 interfaces. So we have vary the renewable resource percentage, and we try to compare our algorithm with the certainty equivalence algorithm that is essentially the CTS. So we want to check whether our algorithm has overcome the 2 inefficient phenomena. So the first one is the counterintuitive flow. So with 20% renewable penetration, CTS would schedule the flow from area 2 to 1, 1 to 3. So the price for the schedule is area 1 is the highest one, and area 2 is a second, 3 is the lowest one. So you can see from area 1 to 3, the power is flow from a high price region to a low price region, right? That's exactly counterintuitive from the economic dispatch, from an economic viewpoint. So for the blue one is what our algorithm schedule, and schedule the flow, the power in the opposite directions from 3 to 1, 1 to 2. And the price converged to the same point. So for the cost evaluation, so here we have this Q1 and Q2. Q1 is this interface flow, Q2 is this interface flow. And so on this point, this is what CTS has scheduled. On the left corner is what our algorithm has scheduled. So you can see for this contour of cost map, our algorithm finds the optimal cost at that darkest point. So to see the other inefficient phenomena, we have increased the renewable penetration by 30%. And the red one is still what CDS does. It schedules the flow from 3 to 1, 1 to 2. And the price is like that. So you can see the price now is economically correct in direction. Their flow from the low price to high price, right? Low price to high price. But the problem is there are still price differences. So what does that mean? That means if we move more power from, let's say, area 3 to 1, then the price of 3 would increase and the price to 1 will decrease, then the price would converge at that point, right? So that's what our algorithm does exactly. So we have increasing the power flow from 3 to 1, 1 to 2. It comes to the convergence of price. And the cost map verify that our schedule is optimal by looking at on the left corner, the cost for our schedule is located at the darkest point. So let me conclude. So my research has built a stochastic paradigm for the power system and the market operation under uncertainty. There are two key components. One is we want to characterize the uncertainty in a probabilistic way. That's the distribution of future has to be used for the operation. And the second component is we need to figure out for each problem what would be the approach to incorporate the distribution we just found and find the optimal solution. So I gave a particular example in this talk on this stochastic interchange scheduling. So it's built upon the current industry practice in US. That's the CTS. We have improved it from the deterministic approach to the stochastic approach. So we have actually talked to the operator in New York. So for CTS, when they implemented, there is always a bias in their estimation of interchange. So after we give the talk on this to them, they finally figure out, okay, that's the place using the mean value of load to do the scheduling can give a bias. So I believe if they can use this stochastic interchange scheduling technique, the bias may go away. Also, as a general approach, we can incorporate different stochastic models of system uncertainty, as long as we can figure out a way to estimate the expected price. So it doesn't matter what kind of distribution of your load, wind, or solar looks like, as long as you can sample it from generated price curves, that is applicable for this framework. Also, we have proved for the convergence behavior under just nominal condition with cost to be convex. We have also extended version for synchronous and asynchronous operation. So for synchronous is for the interconnect system, everybody would schedule their interchange at the same time, simultaneously. By asynchronous is they do not have a unified clock. One can schedule independent with the other's schedule. So for that, we can modify our algorithm to suit for that scenario. And also, as I said for the beginning, it can be applicable to different scales of the system. As in Europe, it can be used for countries, between countries. In the United States, it's states between states, and also it can come to down the smaller scales in microgrids, like just a smaller area in a city or something like that. So that would conclude to the talk. I'm happy to take any questions related or anything.
Yeah, in slide 10.
Thank you.
In slide 10.
In slide 10. Okay. I hate the animation now. Okay.
So this is for 2011, right? And is this,
yes,
like the transactions in 2011 are the same as now, or they have adapted? Because looking at this curve, one thing is evident is these ISOs, when they try to make a transaction for power, they don't care for the price at all. Like if they need some power, they are buying at whatever the price difference is. Like they are, if you look at the red dots, which is like the non-efficient transaction, and the blue dots, they look something like a random variable, and they actually don't care about the price at all.
So when they schedule the interchange, they care about price. But the result like this doesn't reflect that they are care about result. They are care about price. That's mainly because, as I said, when you schedule the interchange, you have this time gap between your scheduled time and the delivery time. So the problem is when you forecast, let's say in 1 hour, what the price look like. So maybe area 1 is $10, area 2 is $20. You will schedule 100 megawatt from 1 to 2, right? But when it comes to the physical delivery time, the price may not be $10 and $20. It may be just a different. Let's say maybe $30 here and $25 there. Then you will see the red dot here.
So what is the mechanism that forces you to actually deliver? Because if you estimate that it's a huge positive gain on your side, and in real time it's actually very negative, you might just choose not to deliver at all.
You cannot do that. That you have to agree on the quantity. So that's the schedule.
You take, because there should be some penalty for the market participant that fails to deliver.
No, market participant, they only have financial obligation. Mm-hmm. So they are not generator or like the consumer at all. So it's like an arbitrage. So, okay, let's say by arbitrage, I mean maybe, okay, let's make this example. So tea in China is very cheap. I buy it in China, I sell it in France. So there will be price difference, right? So I'm trying to bet on the price of tea in China is lower than the price of tea in France. But electricity happens a lot. There are a lot of randomness. The price may not as expected as the tea price. So that's where this uncertainty comes from.
Or the second argument can be like electricity, unlike any other market, like tea, for example, if it is not available, people are not like doing anything. But if electricity is not available, the society is at chaos. So there is a need to maintain power at what
balance,
cost.
Yes. Yeah, so, but for interchange, the original idea to have interchange is to take advantage of cheap price electricity to serve in the expensive area. But the problem is on the price forecast, it's not always accurate, or it's never going to be accurate at all. But we have, let's say Anna and I are trying to make this power interchange, and once we scheduled, we need to agree that we will deliver at that time with the agreed quantity. So that's where the mechanism goes. So the reason why, as you said, when I observe the price is high, I just don't want to deliver that much. That's the reason, because I'm operating my region independent from yours. So I have no knowledge of yours. You see what I mean?
No, but I mean, if you manage to satisfy your local demand,
so
let's
the
say there's a mean ISO that is playing the game and just says, okay,
no ISO
from the grid. So.
ISO is no, that's not how it works.
Some sort of penalty mechanism
that's the market participants. They are taking the penalty. So if you predicted in the wrong direction, you will just lose money. But you can also make profit.
I mean, in real times, there must be some mechanism that assures that the actual produced quantity.
That's the operators. The interchange quantity. Yes.
Quantity, so.
Yeah. So that is. You can see that in. So in in this optimization. So no. So you can see in the second stage, the schedule is incorporated in the constraint. It's treated as a load. You have to satisfy. It's not a decision variable. You can deviate from your schedule. That's the reason why the inefficiency will show up.
To perform your optimization, you seem to need to know a lot of data from every area about demand and supply. And if that's not correct, then the question has no sense. But otherwise, how can you be sure that operators are going to supply this information?
So for each region, the operator knows everything within that region.
Yes.
Right? So that comes to the second stage. You know your network, you know your demand and generation. So the only thing they need to share is the price function. Is this one.
Price function.
Yes, the supply or demand curve you have to share with each other. That comes to the first stage. Only the interchange is the coupling variable of two areas. So because we are not solving this directly, we are using this approach, the social welfare maximization approach to solve for the interchange. By that is only the price curve needs to be shared with each other. The price is not a confidential information.
Yeah, but so the decision on the interchange is based on the prediction of the price curves that different regions have shared.
Yes.
But so what prevents you from cheating? Just sending some fake curve, and that will go into your benefits. And
so the thing is, so that's the subtle point. Operators, they cannot. So everything, the interchange is driven by market participants. Mm-hmm. They are the third party. So they are not really transfer the power. They're just
so
make.
There is no incentive to actually lie.
Yes.
You are not.
So independent operators, they are non-profit. They're non-profit. So you're cheating, no benefit. So, and also before CTS, they do not have. They cannot trade with each other. Everything is determined by the market participants. Yeah, even now it is still the same for CDS. Still, you need market participant to send a request. Okay, I want to move that much power from this one to the other area.
So do you take into account the transmission line constraints?
Yes. So it's incorporated in here. And also for interchange between each other, the timeline constraints is also considered. So any more questions?
I mean, talked about transaction costs. In some that you said like a lot of people, a lot of participants do not trade because of the cost.
Yes.
Where that cost comes from?
So that's more like regulation cost. It's like, except for the price you want to buy electricity from here and sell to there is an additional cost you have to pay to enter the market. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I see. Yeah.
So it's like, okay, you want to enter an auction, you want to buy something really good. You need to buy an entrance ticket to get in.
And that's to pay the market maker, let's say, and the regulation authorities and audits and all that stuff, I imagine.
Right, yes.
So, I mean, it's like gambling, no? I mean,
yeah, it's a kind of a gambling. It depends on how well you can predict the price for the interchange. If you predict it really well, you can make money out of it. That's the arbitrage. Right.
Because usually here in Europe, it's usually this arbitrage happens, but in longer time scales. I mean, you do this arbitrage, but like for next year.
Yeah.
You bet that the price of oil would like go up or down or whatsoever, and then you have like markets, other markets that are closer to real time, that allow you to correct, to fix your bids.
Yes.
Rebid again.
Yes. So we in United States we have that as well. It's called financial transaction rights. That's on annually base. You first need to buy the right for this transmission line on annual base. For each month you can adjust, or you can like rent it to someone who wants it. But this one is only working in the real-time market. It's a very short period. So any more questions related to this talk or not related at all? Okay, if not, thank you everyone to be here.